I'm Emily Valle, and I am a recent graduate at the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs in conflict analysis. I just presented a paper I wrote entitled Primed for Violence, Gender Inequality and Intrastate Conflict in Colombia, which is a paper that's essentially asking the question, was Colombia or is Colombia primed for violence? And the reason that question is interesting is because it allows me to look at what I think is a very intuitively persuasive and appealing theory that links gender inequality to conflict through societal tolerance for violence that is based on a large N study by looking at the specific case of Colombia. I think the most interesting thing about looking at this theory and finding essentially that it does hold some weight in the case of Colombia is that there are a lot of assumptions that underpin most of the mainstream theories in conflict analysis that, like most things in the world, are tainted by stereotypes that feed into gender inequality, sexist or masculine stereotypes like territoriality and aggression that is sort of assumed to be the natural response to when a conflict is either feasible, or if there are grievances that could lead to conflict, it's assumed that conflict will occur. Whereas this theory, by breaking down the relationship between conflict and gender inequality into how gender inequality leads to a tolerance for violence in society, suggests that maybe in certain circumstances, when the reasons for a conflict are there, the feasibility for a conflict are there, sometimes the difference between if that leads to conflict or if that leads to a negotiated or peaceful settlement may have something to do with whether the society or societies involved are tolerant of conflict. So I think it's important, whether or not it has a small role or a big role, to think about gender and how it interacts with our understanding of conflict. It's an area of research that is growing. It's only recently that gender inequality has become more mainstreamed as an issue that needs to be addressed. There's impetus in governments to think about it, so there are policy reasons to be looking at gender inequality because there's now an appetite for it. So I think it would be interesting to build on this research, especially in dealing with the challenge of gender inequality indicators, because as I mentioned, gender inequality is so pervasive in so many aspects of society and life that it's quite a theoretical challenge to find the indicators that can let you know whether or not gender inequality is present and help you measure its impact on conflict. I think the policy implications are heartening from a feminist perspective, in the sense that this theory shows us not only that gender equality should be a part of sustainable peace, but actually that it's a core element that may only have a small role in causing conflict, but could have a really big role in creating sustainable peace and preventing conflict from reoccurring or occurring in the first place. And so from a policy perspective, I think that's important because it gives the policymakers the teeth to sort of say gender equality not only is an important aspirational goal, but is actually a really practical tool for peace.